I never thought my coding passion would lead to this moment of truth. Growing up in the shadow of my golden brother James, I built a career my father dismissed as just playing with computers. Now, as James prepares to marry his high school sweetheart, my father demands I attend, threatening to cut my tuition. Little does he know I have been financially independent for years, earning far more than anyone in my family could imagine. If you have ever dealt with family drama, drop a comment below about where you are watching from and hit subscribe for more real stories like mine. I grew up in a spacious colonial home in suburban Boston with my strict traditional father, Michael, my passive mother, Diana, and my older brother, James. From my earliest memories, the family dynamic was crystal clear. James was the golden child. I was the afterthought. 3 years, my senior James embodied everything my father valued: athletic, outgoing, and interested in business just like him. Bruce, why can you not be more like your brother? Became the soundtrack of my childhood. While James brought home trophies from football games, I quietly discovered my passion for computers in our basement when I was 10. I would spend hours learning basic programming, figuring out how things worked. When I showed my father my first simple game, he barely glanced at it. "This is just playing games, Bruce. Your brother is building real skills on the football field that will matter in life," he said, walking away to watch James practice in the backyard. Throughout elementary school, this pattern continued. James received expensive sports equipment and private coaching, while my requests for computer parts were met with reluctance and lectures about wasting time. My mother would occasionally slip me some money for a new keyboard or programming book, but always with a whispered warning not to tell my father. High school only amplified the divide between us. James became the football team captain, dated the head cheerleader, and was crowned prom king. He was the spitting image of my father in his glory days, and Dad never missed an opportunity to remind everyone of this fact. Meanwhile, I joined the computer club, spent lunches in the library reading about emerging technologies, and won state science competitions that my parents rarely attended. Another computer trophy, my father would say dismissively when I brought home awards. James signed with State University today on a partial athletic scholarship. That is real achievement. The final blow came during my senior year when I announced my intention to study computer science rather than follow the business track my father had mapped out. "You are throwing away your future on a hobby," he exploded during dinner. "No one makes real money playing with computers all day." After a week of constant arguments, he reluctantly agreed to pay my tuition at a tech-focused university across the state, though the agreement came with strings attached. "I will pay for a real education, but I expect you to come to your senses and transfer to business school after a year," he declared, as if my passion was just a phase to outgrow. Throughout my freshman year, every call home included updates about James excelling in his business program, securing prestigious internships through my father's connections, and being groomed for corporate success. When I tried sharing my excitement about mastering new programming languages or creating innovative projects, my father would quickly change the subject. "That is nice, Bruce. But did I tell you James is interning at Morgan Stanley this summer? Now that is setting up a real career." Everything changed during my sophomore year when I developed a scheduling application that caught the attention of a mid-sized tech company in Boston. They offered me a part-time position that paid surprisingly well while allowing me to continue my education. I accepted immediately, not telling my family about this development. For the first time, I had income that was not tied to my father's approval. Over the next year, I excelled both academically and professionally. My application evolved into a suite of productivity tools that the company began marketing to corporate clients. My name appeared on patents, and my compensation increased substantially with each successful product launch. By the middle of my junior year, I had saved enough to cover my remaining tuition and living expenses, though I kept this fact to myself. As my career quietly flourished, the distance between me and my family grew. James graduated with his business degree and immediately joined my father's firm, continuing the dynasty. Family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable as they discussed business connections and golf club politics, while I sat silently, treated as the underachieving son who was still playing with computers. Looking back, I realized my decision to maintain financial ties to my father despite my independence was more about holding on to the hope that he might someday recognize my path as valid. But as I built my career and found success on my terms, I gradually stopped seeking his approval and focused instead on my own fulfillment. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, its cream-colored envelope adorned with elaborate calligraphy. It had been almost 2 years since I had any substantial contact with my family, beyond obligatory holiday texts and brief birthday calls. Opening it revealed an extravagant invitation to James and his high school sweetheart Amanda's wedding at Hartwell Vineyards, one of the most expensive venues in New England. My first instinct was to politely decline. Our relationship had deteriorated to the point where attending felt disingenuous, and the thought of enduring my father's not-so-subtle comparisons for an entire weekend made my stomach knot. I drafted a brief professional response expressing my regrets, along with warm wishes for their future, then set it aside to mail later. 3 days later, my phone rang with my father's name flashing on the screen. I braced myself before answering. "Bruce, we received your RSVP. This is unacceptable," he said without even a greeting. "Hello to you too, Dad," I replied calmly. "I thought it would be better if I did not attend. James and I barely speak anymore." "This is not about you and your feelings," he snapped. "This is about family appearances. Everyone will be there, all our business connections, our extended family. What will people think if my own son does not show up to his brother's wedding?" The conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument. My father employed his usual tactics of guilt, obligation, and family duty. When those did not work, he pulled out his ultimate weapon. "If you do not attend this wedding, I will cut your tuition payments immediately," he threatened, his voice cold. "See how your computer games support you then." I almost laughed at the irony, but managed to maintain my composure. He had no idea that his financial leverage had evaporated years ago. "I will think about it," I replied noncommittally, wanting to end the uncomfortable conversation. Before I could process this interaction, my mother called. Her approach was entirely different. Tearful pleas rather than demands. "Bruce, sweetheart, please reconsider," she said, her voice quavering. "It would mean so much to all of us. I know things have been difficult, but perhaps this could be a new beginning for our family." Her genuine emotion made me pause. Unlike my father, my mother had occasionally shown interest in my life, even if she never stood up to defend me from his criticism. Later that evening, James himself sent a text message. "Hey bro, heard you are not coming to my wedding. Thought we were past all that childhood stuff. Would really mean a lot to me and Amanda if you were there. Do not make this weird for everyone." His message exemplified our relationship, superficially friendly, but with an undercurrent of manipulation, making me the problem as usual. The following weekend, I met my best friend Taylor for coffee and explained the situation. Taylor had witnessed the dynamics of my family firsthand throughout our friendship and understood the complexity better than anyone. "Maybe this is your chance," Taylor suggested thoughtfully. "You have been hiding your success from them for years. Perhaps it is time they see who you have really become." "What good would that do?" I asked. "They will just shift from dismissing me to trying to benefit from my success. At least then you would be dealing with the truth," Taylor pointed out. "And you would never again have to hear your father threaten to cut you off financially." Taylor's perspective stayed with me for days as I weighed my options. Eventually, I decided to attend the wedding, but on my own terms. I would not pretend to be the struggling student they still thought I was. If confrontation happened, I would finally stand my ground. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with increasing pressure. Distant relatives called to confirm my attendance. My father sent detailed instructions about appropriate attire and behavior expectations. My mother forwarded seating charts and schedules, all reinforcing how important this event was to the family reputation. Meanwhile, at work, I was leading a major project integrating our software with a Fortune 500 company's systems. The successful implementation would potentially double our user base and had attracted attention from larger tech companies interested in acquisition. The timing was ironic. As my family continued to dismiss my career choice, I was negotiating deals worth more than my father's entire business. As the wedding weekend approached, I found myself strangely calm. For the first time, I was entering a family event knowing my own worth regardless of their perception. Whatever happened, I would no longer carry the burden of their disapproval. The Hartwell Vineyards estate sprawled across 50 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. Pulling up to the venue in my modest rental car, I had left my Tesla at home to avoid unnecessary questions. I felt immediately out of place among the luxury vehicles and formally dressed guests arriving for the rehearsal dinner. I had deliberately chosen attire that was appropriate but not ostentatious, a well-tailored navy suit that projected quiet confidence rather than trying to impress. As I entered the reception hall, my father immediately spotted me and made his way over, his face set in familiar disapproval. "You could not bother to wear a tie," were his first words to me after nearly 2 years of minimal contact. I was wearing a tie, just not the flashy silk one he preferred. "Nice to see you too, Dad," I replied calmly. "The venue is beautiful." He gave a dismissive wave. "James deserves the best. He just secured the Wilson account at work. 7 figures. The implication was clear. My brother continued to excel while I presumably struggled with my computer hobby. Throughout the cocktail hour, I navigated awkward interactions with extended family members who seemed to have been briefed on exactly how to make me uncomfortable. Still playing with computers, my Uncle Roger asked with a condescending smile, "Your father says James is set to make partner in record time." "Something like that," I replied vaguely, not taking the bait. From across the room, I overheard my father holding court with his business associates. "James has completely revitalized our marketing strategy. The boy has a natural talent for business, just like his old man. He will take over the company someday, no question." When asked about me by someone I did not recognize, my father's voice lowered, but not enough. "Bruce is still figuring things out. Some technical job with computers. Not everyone can follow the same path, you know." The family photo session before dinner proved equally uncomfortable. The photographer positioned family members, while my father made subtle adjustments, ensuring James stood prominently beside him while I was relegated to the edge of the frame. "Bruce, try to look happy for once," my father muttered as the photographer prepared to take the shot. "This is going in the company newsletter." During the rehearsal dinner, James approached me for the first obligatory brotherly exchange. He slapped my back harder than necessary. "Glad you finally decided to do something right and show up," he said with that familiar smirk. "Dad was about to disown you." "Congratulations on your wedding," I replied neutrally. "Amanda looks happy." "She is," James agreed, then leaned in conspiratorially. "Just closed on a house in Father's neighborhood, too. 5 bedrooms. Got to start planning for the future generation of the family business, right?" The breaking point came during my father's speech at the rehearsal dinner. Glass raised, he spoke at length about James following in his footsteps, about building a legacy together, about how proud he was of everything James had accomplished. "To my son," he concluded, "who has exceeded every expectation and made this father prouder than words can express." Not once did he acknowledge my presence or existence. It was as if he had only one son in the room. Something shifted inside me at that moment. Not anger, but a calm certainty that I no longer needed to participate in this charade. I quietly excused myself and headed for the parking lot, intending to drive back to my hotel and reconsider my attendance at the main event tomorrow. I had almost reached my car when I heard my father's voice behind me. "Where do you think you are going?" he demanded, slightly winded from hurrying after me. "The dinner is not over." "It is for me," I replied simply. "Congratulations to James. I will see about tomorrow." My father's face darkened. "You walk out now, and I mean it, Bruce. Not another dime for your education. Not 1 cent." A strange calm washed over me. After years of threats and manipulation, I suddenly felt nothing but pity for this man who thought he still held power over me. "Dad," I said quietly, "I have been paying my own tuition for almost 3 years now." He blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about, that hobby you have been dismissing? It turned into a career while you were busy focusing on James." "I am the Chief Technology Officer of Nexus Software Solutions. We have 68 employees, contracts with 22 Fortune 500 companies, and I earned more last quarter than James will make this year." My father stared at me in stunned silence. "That technical job with computers," I continued. "It has put me in a position to buy your entire company if I wanted to. We just received an acquisition offer that would value my personal shares at 8 figures. "You are lying," he finally sputtered. "This is just some story to save face." I pulled out my phone, opened a business magazine's digital edition, and showed him the recent feature profiling rising tech entrepreneurs under 30. There I was on the list with a professional headshot and details of my company's growth. "This is not possible," he whispered, the color draining from his face. I noticed James standing frozen at the entrance to the parking lot, close enough to have heard everything. His expression shifted from shock to something more calculating as the implications sank in. "Enjoy the rest of your evening," I said quietly, "and James's wedding tomorrow. I think I have made enough of an appearance to satisfy family obligation." I got into my car and drove away, leaving my father standing in the parking lot for once completely speechless. The immediate aftermath of my revelation was a strange, suspended moment in time. My father remained rooted in place, mouth slightly open, the magazine article still displayed on my phone screen, illuminating his stunned face in the darkening parking lot. James stood several yards away, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and calculation. Neither of them called after me as I drove away. For the first time in my life, I felt an odd sense of peace after a family encounter. The weight of pretense had lifted, replaced by the simple relief of truth. I returned to my hotel room, ordered room service, and slept better than I had in years. By morning, my phone was flooded with messages. My mother had sent a series of increasingly concerned texts, culminating in a simple, "Is it true? Please call me." Distant relatives and family friends who had witnessed the parking lot confrontation had apparently spread the news with remarkable efficiency. Even Amanda James's fiancée had messaged asking if I would still attend the ceremony. I decided to skip the wedding itself, but sent a generous gift with a sincere note wishing the couple happiness. This felt like the right balance between standing my ground and unnecessary cruelty on their special day. The real fallout began 3 days later when my father called. His tone had transformed completely from our last interaction. "Bruce, son," he began with forced joviality, "I think we need to sit down and talk about this exciting company of yours. I had no idea you had become so entrepreneurial." The awkward pause suggested he had wanted to use the word successful but could not quite bring himself to say it. "There is nothing to discuss, Dad," I replied calmly. "I did not tell you about my success to gain your approval. I told you so you would understand that financial threats no longer work as leverage. But we are family," he insisted, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used for reluctant business clients. "I have valuable experience I could offer. Perhaps I could consult for your company or introduce you to some of my contacts." The irony was almost too much. After years of dismissing my career path, he now wanted to capitalize on it. "I appreciate the offer, but we are doing fine with our current advisors." This new dynamic continued over the following weeks. My father sent links to articles about family businesses and the importance of trusted advisors. He even suggested lunch meetings to catch up properly. I maintained polite but firm boundaries, agreeing only to occasional family dinners with clear time limits. My relationship with my mother gradually improved as she made genuine efforts to understand my life. During a private lunch, she tearfully apologized for not standing up for me over the years. "I always knew you were special, Bruce," she admitted. "I just did not know how to support you when your father was so set in his ways. I am sorry I was not stronger. We all did the best we could with what we knew at the time." I told her, finding forgiveness easier than I had expected. We began a new tradition of weekly phone calls where she asked thoughtful questions about my work and life. James's reaction was more complicated. His initial response was a mix of jealousy and opportunism, sending texts that oscillated between passive-aggressive jabs and attempts to network. "Always knew you were smart, but kept it quiet, huh? Very strategic." Read one message. Another: "Got a friend with a startup idea. Could you take a look? Might be worth your investment." I maintained cordial but distant relations with James, neither encouraging nor completely shutting down communication. Over time, as he realized I would not be flaunting my wealth or competing with him for our father's approval, his attitude gradually shifted toward cautious respect. 6 months after the wedding revelation, I made a decision that brought me unexpected fulfillment. I established a scholarship fund for young programmers from disadvantaged backgrounds, providing not just financial support, but mentorship and internship opportunities. Working with these talented kids who reminded me of my younger self became one of the most rewarding aspects of my success. Around this same time, my mother orchestrated a family dinner at a neutral restaurant. My father made a visible effort to engage with my work, asking questions about programming languages and market trends. Though his understanding was superficial, the attempt itself represented progress. "Your brother tells me your company is developing artificial intelligence applications now," he said during dessert, clearly repeating terminology James had coached him on. "That is right," I replied, explaining the basics of our current project in accessible terms. "I may not understand all the details," he admitted with uncharacteristic humility, "but it sounds impressive." These small moments did not erase years of dismissal and favoritism, but they opened the door to a more authentic relationship based on who we actually were, rather than who he wanted me to be. My healing journey extended beyond family reconciliation. I began therapy to address the lingering effects of growing up feeling perpetually inadequate. I strengthened connections with friends who valued me for myself and built a chosen family of colleagues and mentors who understood my passion for technology. I took particular satisfaction in mentoring junior developers, ensuring they received the encouragement and validation I had lacked. The most profound lesson from this experience was recognizing how financial independence had freed me from toxic family dynamics. Money itself was not the victory. The freedom to define my own worth was. For years, I had internalized my father's assessment of my value, allowing his dismissal of my passion to diminish my sense of self. Breaking that pattern required not just external success, but internal recognition of my inherent worth. Looking back now, I realize forgiveness is not a single moment, but an ongoing process. There are still family gatherings where old patterns emerge, comments that sting, comparisons that feel unfair. The difference is that I no longer seek validation from these interactions. I can acknowledge the hurt without being defined by it. Has our relationship been completely repaired? No. There are too many years of damage for a perfect reconciliation. But we have found a way forward based on mutual respect rather than power dynamics, and that feels like enough. The greatest gift of this journey has been learning that family legacy is not just what is handed down to us, but what we choose to carry forward. I have decided not to perpetuate the patterns of conditional love and narrow definitions of success. Instead, I am building something new, relationships based on acceptance, encouragement of authentic passions, and celebration of diverse paths. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations to follow your own path? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by family approval. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be yourself unapologetically.